Thank you, SOSV, and welcome to our listeners. I am super excited to dive into this panel on powering the energy future of India, and invariably, impacting the energy trajectory of the world. When we look at India, there's this on the one hand, there's this optimism, there's this golden opportunity to decarbonize by coupling, the rising manufacturing sector with the rising sustainability sector. And the other side is the reality of the fact that India is going to add 33 million people to the global consumer class. And that comes with it, that brings with it an insatiable demand for energy. So navigating this uh, contending reality. I am so excited to have two veterans with me to delve into these topics today. We have Dr. Amit Paithankar, Director and CEO of Waaree Energy, India's largest solar manufacturer, and we have Samir Shah, Managing Director of Peak Sustainability Ventures. Thank you both for making time. It's an honor to have you guys join us. And you know, to just dive in, maybe I'll just start with a question to you, Amit. Wari Energies, and I'm sure you'll tell us more, has more than 5x production capacity of solar in less than 5 years. So this is remarkable speed and scale. Would love to know the market drivers as well as the capabilities drivers underpinning this spectacular rise.
Well, Parishit, thank you very much, first of all, for having me and Samir on the call. Yes, it's been a very, very interesting run for the last few years here. But Wari actually did start the journey a long time back. It's a 3-decade-old company and got into solar actually in 2007. So it has weathered the storms that solar. It's like solar flares, right? You get these solar flares, and there are these storms which you have, and so there is there are sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, and it's been a fairly for a long period of time, for the last 3-4 years now, pretty much on the upward swing, primarily because of the fact that solar energy is at a very sweet spot at this stage, from a price perspective, from the perspective of being able to produce fairly fast, being able to be deployed fairly fast, and then coupled with that, the demand is very, very high, and we are seized with the need for energy transition, and solar is placed very, very well. So combination of all of that factors really helped us grow very well. Government policies have also been very, very strong. So I think it's a combination of elements. It's demand, it's government policy, it's the manufacturers, is the customers, is the whole ecosystem which has actually helped.
Great. And yeah, we are delighted to have you here and looking forward to, unpacking some of those concepts a bit more over the course of this panel. Over to you, Samir. You're one of the first sustainability specialist venture capital firms in the country, playing a pioneering role investing as a VC. Tell us a bit about your firm and also about this journey of Peak Sustainability Ventures.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Parikshit, first of all, for inviting me to share my views. So, look, at Peak, we run a firm focused primarily on sustainability. And yes, you're right. We are one of the first investors. And since 2019, we have been investing only in sustainability. I might add that we were investors in Wari, and I was on the board for 7 years. So I had some role in the journey of Wari in the initial years as well. Um, at Peak, we see sustainability and climate as an opportunity where we believe we are at the foothills of the opportunity. We are seeing so much of opportunity ahead of us in terms of new sectors, new opportunities for investment, as well as for generating high risk adjusted returns while meeting the goals on climate and sustainability. We focus on four main areas. One is new energy, where we focus on energy security, energy inclusion, energy transacting energy in terms of grid, as well as energy transition into a cleaner energy future. We look at food systems. We look at water, a sector that is highly ignored by many venture capitalists, and I think that has been a focus for us for many years. And then the broad areas of climate. We are finding a number of opportunities in this space. In addition to the fund, we also are interested in platforms which help corporates decarbonize. And there are some examples I would like to share as the session progresses. So I think net, I think we are very committed to this space. We are very interested in this space. We continue to see a lot of opportunity in the years ahead.
Awesome. And yeah, what's interesting there, Samir, you mentioned risk adjusted returns and investing in these new energy transition modalities. And we look at the excitement in India, and Amit, you were mentioning that the market demand pull as well as the price is finally there, um, and the energy transition is already underway in India. Then you look at CATL's IPO this year, and there seems to be enthusiasm, and there's investments in battery manufacturing. And on the other hand, you look at the US and in EU, there seems to be a graveyard of battery manufacturing platforms and big capex investments that have gone to zero. What are we missing here in the West, and why are things different in your side of the world?
No, I think Asia in general is actually been pretty much at the forefront of um, this part of the energy journey, I guess. I mean, up until now, India, from a oil and gas perspective, for most of the last several decades, has been more of a recipient, right? Did not have a whole host of resources from that perspective. But sun shines here in abundance, right?
Mhm.
And we have a fairly large coastline. We have a fairly good wind pattern, although again it ebbs and flows. You do have a substantial possibility of wind as well. So all of that taken together, India is in a sweet spot as far as renewables are concerned, and the government recognizes that, the industry recognizes that. It also helps India in actually saving some foreign exchange, and actually, and so it all layers. It actually turns out to be a very important win-win
Mhm,
for India to be pursuing
mhm.
renewables very, very aggressive. And that's the reason why India is slightly differently positioned across the world. And what has really worked is policy, demand, and industry picking up the cudgels of manufacturing together, along with making sure that there are projects which are sometimes through centers, sometimes through state government, sometimes pure private money, all of that taken together. Renewable energy projects are being deployed. And so we are at a point where 5 years ahead of schedule, we have hit the 50% mark for renewable, which is quite an interesting achievement, I would say.
Right,
So I think
right.
all of these things are coming together. It's the right
Yeah.
time.
It certainly seems so. And you brought up policy and the proactive role that policy is playing, and I do want to address the elephant in the room early on in this panel is, will we see a path to price competitiveness of Indian solar to Chinese solar? And what's your outlook on a path beyond China when it comes to solar and renewable energy? Because I believe Waaree is now the largest manufacturer of solar outside China in the world. So clearly, you guys must see a path towards that direction, right?
Right. No, great question. And it is indeed an elephant in the room. Can anyone, anywhere other than China, be as efficient and as competitive in manufacturing? And China has done a phenomenal job. Let's understand this very, very well. They have been at it for the last 2 decades and have perfected the art of manufacturing in terms of efficiencies, in terms of production lines, designing the production lines, optimizing it, and all of that, right? So I think It's great story thus far. The beauty of it is that there is a method to it, there is a technology associated with it, and it is definitely replicable, right? So if you really look at the components of cost at the end of the day, when you look at a P&L, what are the components of the cost, right? I mean, there is cost of goods sold. So you have labor cost there, you have cost of electricity, you have cost of all of that. Can India be competitive in all of that? The answer to that question is yes, we can be. um, the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed there, very important, is can you be as efficient? You know, the same amount of unit of electricity, the same amount of people, the same number of people, and a given period of time. Can you be producing exactly that much or equal or more? That will require time and learning. And but is it achievable? The answer to that question is also yes. The other aspect, when you come lower down in the P&L, you start looking at the capital financing costs, other utility costs, and so on and so forth. Which, of course, again, China has mastered that art of investment also very well. Now, can India, do a good job there? Again, the answer to that question is also an unequivocal yes. I would say uh, India is on a journey. It will take anywhere between, I would say, 2 to 4, maybe 5 years. In that period of time, you will find Indian companies as competitive in terms of price points and efficiencies as anywhere in the world.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a promising note. And
May I add a couple of comments to what Amit has said?
yeah,
So look, I think India today, we are in the position where our energy needs are going to grow over the next many years as India grows to the third largest economy. The important thing is to bend the curve on climate and to reduce the energy intensity per unit of GDP. However, ironically, we will be adding coal at the same level as we're adding renewables. And we are also going to add nuclear, which is, not renewable, a clean fuel. So all this will be needed to enable India to meet its energy goals for the future. I wanted to pick up on a point that Amit said, where India has a lot of sunshine. Absolutely correct. And I won't add more to the renewables part of the story. But India also has a lot of agriculture. And we have about 400 million tons of agri waste every year. So this is where policy comes together with private sector, with innovation to see how we can solve India's problems, or not solve may be too strong a word, address India's problems to the best extent possible. So just recently, we announced a project with Arvind Mills in Gujarat, where we are saying that they're going to take 50,000 tons of cotton stock, 50,000 tons of cotton stock, and convert it into biocoal, which can be directly used in the boilers as one-to-one substitution for fossil fuels. And this enables a sustainability journey. And Arvind is a supplier to global brands such as Gap, you know, Marks and Spencer, etc. So it allows these companies to reduce their scope 3 emissions because they are buying goods from Arvind. And at the same time, we are replacing coal. I mean, India has used 1 billion tons of coal last year, and that also continue. But at the same time, you need to find at, alternatives which at scale can address these issues. If this 50,000 ton a year plant works, we are about to do 200,000 tons. So these are the growth opportunities. The second, biofuels, is bio CBG, with the government announced a program called PATAP, which is called Sustainable Alternative Towards Transportation, affordable transportation. And we import 81% today of our mobility related energy needs, to the extent that that can be substituted by bio CBG converted from waste. That's the classic circularity, waste to energy story. India using the resources that it has at its disposal to provide an alternative pathway to fossil fuels to meet its energy goals, its growth expectations, and climate.
there's another panel in this climate summit, which is blue is the new green.
So,
Right. And I think the climate movement is finding this pragmatism here through its hard learned lessons, where maybe it's not coal, but it's bringing renewability to coal, which is what you're highlighting, and being practical about and realistic about our needs. And I guess that's the other side of this. It's not just productivity; it's the resilience part that both of you are touching upon. And both these approaches, Samir, they're technologically led innovations, and Amit also mentioned technology and efficiency there. And on the technology side, it seems there's a soup of technologies. Electrolyzers here, perovskites there, and every battery chemistry possible is being has permutations and combinations today. So, from the investor perspective, how are you making sense of this innovation soup in in energy transition?
I think you have to separate the good from the not so good. I think the problem which you have, which is in an overpopulated sector, is you have to be much more careful and much more stringent in your analysis. And yes, we have seen all of these companies that you mentioned doing manganese zinc dioxide batteries, doing vanadium flow batteries, doing iron air batteries, doing all kinds of stuff. I think the important thing is to see, for us, the parameters are very clear. Can this scale in the future? Is it our expectation this will scale? B, is it affordable? And does it meet India's needs? And if the answer to these three questions is a yes, then we would take a very, very close look at these technologies. And one point I wanted to make is that, look, we think of climate globally, so we look at solutions also globally. And our perspective is that we need to use best in class technologies wherever they are in the world, to the extent that they can help India achieve its energy goals, whether it's energy transition and or energy security, in a meaningful manner. So we have looked at these technologies. I think we are careful. I think the only way you analyze this is that, do much more of upfront analysis, as well as talk to a breadth of people. I mean, nothing new that you wouldn't do in other spaces. But I would also add that in my 30-year investment career, I find climate investing to be the most complex, most intricate, most interconnected, with nuances that some we appreciate, some we find out as we go along. But we are admittedly in the risk taking business. I don't have all the answers on day one, but when we have sufficient sort of information and confidence, we begin the journey with a smart entrepreneur and see how we can make them successful.
Right. When it comes to innovation, Amit, I'm sure there is multiple innovation initiatives and ways to deal with startups at Wari, but there's a new orthogonal area approaching. When we thought of energy, there was the infamous energy, water, land nexus. It seems we've added AI to that nexus, and AI is going to make tremendous draw on the grid, right? AI is now a capex story all of a sudden, and scaling up these data centers, right, is creating demand pressure on grid for energy. So, how do you see Wari's role evolve as AI and feeding and fueling AI and the energy that comes with it will become a big part of the energy mix?
Well, our little small brain here in the body consumes most of the energy that we use. Likewise, data centers are going to consume most of the energy that we produce. And the more intelligent they get, the more guzzlers of power will they be, right? So, I mean, the estimates at this point in time are quite astounding. In just a few years, literally 5 years from now, we are going to consume 945 terawatt hour.
My God.
Is double than what we are today, right?
Right.
From just sheer data centers perspective. The US, if my memory proves me right, is roughly consuming around 2-3% at this point in time of its overall energy basket
Mhm.
uh, for data centers, and it's going to go to around somewhere around 7 to 10% by the turn of this decade.
Right.
India is right now around 0.5%, and it's going to be around 3-4% by 2030. So it's the sheer amount of energy required by data centers is huge. And so if you really look at the overall energy basket, where will you be in a position to deploy this energy at speed and at scale at which these data centers are coming up, right? Because the speed is very high.
Yeah.
And so yes, nuclear is a great idea, and by the way, this is not either or just one of these ideas, but
Yes.
whether it's nuclear, whether it's even fossil fuel, whatever technology you talk about, right? Its gestation period is anywhere between 5 to 7 years, right?
Right.
Whereas renewable gestation period can be literally a year's time, 1.5 years time, right?
Mm.
And so at this point in time, what is the most practical, the least cost alternative for you to create uh, power stations that can power all these data centers? The answer to that definitely turns to be solar. And a combination of battery energy storage systems, it gives you a 24 by 7 possibility. And that's the reason why I guess I share the same optimism that Samir shared, that we are actually just at the beginning of this
Yeah.
um, energy wave. You know, for developed countries, for developing countries all across the world, I would say I think we are just at the beginning of
Indeed.
of a big multi-decadal growth story.
Ah, that's encouraging. That's exciting too. And yeah, there is greater awareness that these data centers would not have uh, amortization periods that we once taught, and, and the economics will yeah, there will have to be some synergy in the lead up times.
I would just like to add one more point to what Amit said. So I think he has talked about AI. We have come at it slightly differently, which is to say, look, AI will require a lot of cooling because of obviously the power it consumes. So there's a company that we have invested in, which is based in Europe, which does what is called direct to chip cooling, which is a new phase of innovation where you're cooling only the chip, and that reduces the energy cost of cooling
Right.
substantially. So, what the solutions we look for are ones where we say, look, can we keep the use of AI the same, but reduce the energy requirements so that you need less of solar, because then solar can be used or deployed to reduce sort of, India's overall coal consumption or India's overall footprint on fossil fuels as well. So there are technologies which are emerging, which can enable us to say, look, how can we use solutions? And in this case, it is a graphene-based solutions which cools only the chip. But this
Right.
is just an example of the many innovations that we are looking at globally, which
Mhm.
can allow us to say, look, how do we benefit from energy efficiency and look at solutions that can be scaled, and these are at price points which are affordable today. I mean, these have paybacks of under 2.5 years, actually.
Yeah, and it helps to have an integrated national grid, which is, I think, one of India's, something India can boast and be proud of. And
Yeah.
Samir, something that I hear from you over and over again is invest in the best technology, and that can be from anywhere. You you you, you don't necessarily have to stay within India. And what I'm observing here is, gone are the days where World Bank would observe a technology mature and then partner with a multilateral bank and create special purpose vehicles to give developmental loans. You're doing it seems a bit differently, where you're technology transferring in through investments. Tell us a bit more about how you're able to do that.
Sure. I think the model you mentioned is for the last generation. I think we are now in the next generation where, there are no boundaries as far as climate is concerned. So let me give you an example of how Indian technology is being used overseas and globally, and then vice versa in terms of how we are using best in class technologies overseas in India. In India, we have invested in a company called Indra Water, which is out of IIT Mumbai, which does decentralized water solutions for industry, allowing them to basically recycle the water. So Unilever is currently using them in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Mexico, and in Egypt. And this is just the beginning. So this is a classic example of how an Indian company and Indian technology, we are exporting hardware and software to companies, to such large multinationals overseas. I think the reverse is true in hydrogen. We invested in a company out of Norway, which does what is called hydrogen efficiency, which doesn't distinguish between the colors of hydrogen, whether it be gray or green or blue, but says that whenever we are producing hydrogen, we, with our palladium membrane, can improve the energy or the hydrogen efficiency by 5 to 7%. So, ironically, the higher the cost of the hydrogen you're producing, this benefits you even more because it gives you a quantitative result that is 5 to 7% better. That's an example of how we have been speaking to 20 largest companies in India who have seen merit in discussing this, and we are close to sort of doing a pilot in India using this refining technology. I see this, the world's converging more and more in terms of saying that, look, climate is a global issue. We need to look at best in class technologies wherever they are. The one caveat, though, Parikshit, that I might say is that we look at the company only if it has a substantial portion or looks to have a substantial portion of a footprint in India. And by that, I mean 20%, because we sit in India. Our core is to address India's issues. So if it is a company that is US to US, then it perhaps doesn't fall into our domain. We want to work with companies that, of course, can work overseas and, of course, will have a large presence overseas, but need to have a meaningful presence in India to enable India to achieve its climate outcomes.
Got it. Yeah, deliver the best levelized cost of energy wherever the technology may come from. And, to in the final leg of this session, Amit, Samir's words are very, on the one hand, there's this knowledge is universal and it's never been faster to innovate, to discover. And we're living in these times when global supply chains are undergoing this reshuffling. Um, how do you look at Waree's outlook in a world full of tariffs, trade wars, and this geopolitical reshuffle, and how you'll continue to supply energy beyond India under such a backdrop?
A great question, Parikshit. Uh, from our perspective, we consider India, of course, as an extremely important market for us, and we do consider United States also as an extremely important market for us. And so we'll be closely linked, associated, and invested in both these markets. Of course, India is our base. We are headquartered here in Mumbai, uh, and we are manufacturing in the United States as well. We have a manufacturing facility in Texas, in a neighborhood of Houston, and at this point in time, we manufacture roughly 1.6 gigawatts of panels there, which shortly is going to move to 3.2 in that same facility. And we have also bought over Mayor Burger's assets related to module manufacturing, which is in Arizona. And so that gives us an even larger footprint in the US. So we'll continue to invest in the US, manufacture in the US. We've already said last, I guess, 6 months back, we'll manufacture solar panels, we'll manufacture cells there. And eventually, we'll also potentially look at manufacturing battery energy storage systems in the US as well. So I think the best way to navigate through the geopolitical upheaval that we are going to go through is just understanding the rules of the game. And the rules of the games will keep changing. I think one constant in the rule of the game is if you are manufacturing in your key markets, you are probably okay. And I think that's the important constant we are having with in our mind, and that's how we are moving ahead.
Great. Those are wise words. Thank you very much. I know we're at time, but yeah, I'm going to repeat that because I love how you put it. If you're manufacturing in the right market and focusing on the right problem to solve, you're okay. Samir, we would love to hear your thoughts on the same as well. You're clearly investing globally, but for India and from India for the world. So if you could drive us home, that'll be great.
Thanks, Parikshit. So let me take a different perspective from an investor standpoint in terms of the geopolitics. So, as I mentioned, our focus is on innovation. Our focus is on addressing climate issues, which are global. And our focus is on India primarily. But of course, what we do or don't do in India affects the world. What the world does or doesn't do affects India. So we have to think of this as one continuum. So in that context, we invest with a lens where we say, look, is this technology that is applicable to India? And is this a technology that can scale in India? And our approach has been where we would invest a small amount of capital in the company overseas and then say that, look, if India works and you set up manufacturing in India, then we will invest not only 2x, but perhaps even 3x of what we have invested in your company overseas to say, look, if we can use this technology that can enable India to achieve its goals, then that's something that we'll be very keen to do. And yes, geopolitics and the headlines are what they are. We are focused on companies. We are seeing sufficient opportunities across the spectrum in terms of companies we invest in. And we effectively go about our business saying that, look, there's a principle we have, which I say, remind myself every day to say, look, do what you can with what you have. And I don't wait for trillions of dollars of headline news to say, are these, well, we need 10 trillion and we have only X trillion, so we should be depressed. I said, no, we are optimistic about the future. We will deal with the situation as it comes. We will work with what we have, and we have very good partners overseas that we are working with, in India that we are working with, in academia that we are working with, and some very interesting projects we are going to announce in the few weeks ahead, including one where we convert from a wastewater treatment plant. We create energy, providing the nexus between water and energy to say how we can use the biogas from a wastewater treatment plant to get biogas and bio CBG. If this works, we have announced a plan to do 100 of these, which involves a $300 million investment. And one example of how do we think of energy inclusion. So a company we have funded called Metafin Clean Tech Finance is today providing rooftop solar finance in 4,000 villages in India, which are moving towards energy transition and replacing uh, diesel with solar. The intent of this company is to go to 100,000 villages over a period of 5 years. This shows you how solar can change lives, change climate. And here we have done 50% of the lending to first time borrowers, which says, well, we are also doing financial inclusion. And more than 46% of the borrowers are led by women co-founders, which means we're also progressing on gender equality. So the comment I'm making is that is reflective of the fact that when you're addressing solar, you're addressing many other secondary SDG goals as well, which together are very powerful in addressing India's problems at scale. So I think in addition to what we do at Peak in the fund, there are a number of these parallel, I would say, of projects that we are undertaking, which have, in our minds, the ability to move the needle on climate in a meaningful manner. And we are excited, and we are going to continue this for the years ahead.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Samir. Yeah, this mix of, optimism, pragmatism, and realism is definitely what underpins the Indian way. And I'm so grateful and honored to be hearing from you two veterans today. So really appreciate your time and thank you very much. I know you have busy days to get to.